Hello everyone and welcome to BW Education. Today we have Dr. Pramath Raj Sinha, the founding dean of ISB Hyderabad, Ashoka University, and is also the co-founder of Upgrad Harappa. To start with, how do you perceive generative AI impacting every sphere of life, including the world of work?
I think the generative AI is something that is transformational. It is something that uh, is a big disruption. Uh, I think people have already said that, but I am in agreement with that. I think what will happen is that a lot of work with thinking and logic and thinking through things uh, will get done faster and better through generative AI. So everywhere there is thinking involved or putting some logic together, bringing in some content to support that thinking, those jobs and those activities at the workplace will get significantly transformed. And I do think that anything from logic all the way to creativity can benefit from it, where there is no logic. You just want to come up with something very creative or something very different. The expanse of what it covers is quite large.
So, do you think the technology today is providing level playing field to all individuals, or some people are just getting left out?
Obviously, people are going to get left out, Mayank,
Yes.
because you need access to technology at various levels. You need a device, but even if you have a device, you need a good understanding of how to use AI. It's not trivial. It's not as complicated as having to write a programming language set of code, but it's also not as simple as simply uh, typing into the screen. You have to know what to say and what to ask. Otherwise, it's garbage in and garbage out. So, no, the level playing field is not there. Those who are have better access or are more familiar will be able to use it much better than others. And that is the concern. I think we need to get everybody to be aware of how to use it, where to use it, and so on.
So, following up on this, is there any specific population segment that is getting left out?
Well, lots of population segments. I think it's right now, it's mostly the techies who are people who are somewhat more tech savvy and early adopters who are using it. Other people are actually feeling a bit intimidated by it. They don't actually realize the simplicity of it. Uh,
Okay.
but I was recently speaking to a group of teachers and principals of high schools, and honestly, they are all using it. So I was very surprised that now, are they using it well? Do they truly understand the power of it? I don't think so. Because when I first asked the question, are you using it? Everybody raised their hands. Then when I started giving examples of how it could be used in a school, people were observing very carefully and asking me questions and did not disclose during the meeting. But after the meeting, they all were coming up to me and asked me, "Oh, that is great. How did you do it? How does it? Hamari kuch training kara do, right?" So I do think that people have some early exposure, but they need a little bit of in-depth exposure to really incorporate it in their work. It's easy to run some fun experiments, play around with some images, and ask them to create your CV or help improve an email that you wrote. But how do you really incorporate it in the most value-added part of your work? I don't think it has happened yet.
Can you share some example for it, like how to incorporate that into work? Mm.
Yeah, I mean, I can share. Suppose I'm taking the example of education, okay, and it could be curriculum that could be created anywhere. So I'm from Bihar, and I grew up at the time of the Jayaprakash Narayan movement, uh, uh, post around the emergency and post the emergency. Now, not many people teach about that, right?
mm,
Because
mm,
it may not be very significant in the curriculum.
mm,
So I said, okay, if in a history class for 14-year-olds, people in ninth grade, I would like to bring in some three classes on Sri Jayaprakash Narayan, his background, and the Purn Swaraj movement that he launched in Bihar in the 70s. Can you create the content and curriculum for it? Boom, it'll come out. Then
yes.
you say that, okay, uh, on around this, can you create some quizzes that I can give the children? It'll create quizzes. Can you
Mm,
give me a final assessment that I can give the children? It'll do that. Then you say, well, so that I don't have just one exam and everybody copies, answers the same question. Can you create 10 possible end assessments for me for the same course?
mm,
It'll create 10 assessments. And all this is happening in real time as I'm talking to you.
yes. Yes.
And then you say, okay, are there examples that we can bring in of connections to other such movements in India and abroad? I would like to highlight those to the class as well. So it tweaks the content and then says, now redesign the assessments and the final exam. All this is happening at the speed at which I am talking to you.
Mm, yes. It just
Now,
requires a prompt, accurate
yes,
prompt to yes.
yeah, so somebody needs to know that this is possible and I can actually get some pretty good. Now, you may still doubt that it may not have everything in it, but I can tell you that it's a pretty 95% correct.
Yes.
I'll give you another example. This is a fun example. I had to give a speech to 8-year-olds, school children.
Okay. Yes. Yes.
And the school had come up with a very complicated topic around multiculturalism and global diversity and so on. So, very high sounding words. And I had to speak to 8-year-olds. My reaction was, how am I going to do this? I've never spoken to 8-year-olds. And then you're giving me this topic which is so esoteric
Mm,
that forget 8-year-olds, 34-year-olds will not understand.
yes. Mm,
So anyway, I had some ideas. So I put those ideas into ChatGPT and said, can you create a 15-minute speech for 8-year-olds using these ideas? Can you believe it? It actually created a script for me. And the script was amazing because it had two very key concepts that I had not thought of, which actually became the cornerstone of my speech. In fact, it talked about the fact that globalization is like a river, and the river cuts through countries and carries things along, but it also has negative impact because it can flood, it can erode the banks and cause damage. And therefore, to prevent damages, you build bridges across countries, which is the whole point about multiculturalism and amazing analogy that I would not have thought of. And by the way, I was doing this on the way to the speech because I had not prepared enough. Okay, so I was doing this on my mobile phone. So when I did this, I said that this idea connects. That was the time of the G20. So everywhere there were these signs of Vasudeva Kutumbakam. And
mm,
so I said, okay, can we weave in this idea of Vasudeva Kutumbakam in the script? Boom, it did that. Then I said, is this actually just a phrase or is there a shlok behind it? And can you give me the full shlok, the origin of the shlok and the meaning of the shlok? It actually put all that into my speech. And by the time I got there, I had all this available. I did not know the full shlok. The full shlok is actually very beautiful. It says that people who are small minded get into I, me, mine. People who are large hearted think of the world as a family. Now, it's such a beautiful show to tell
yes.
8-year-olds.
Yes.
So, Next day, I have a friend in Bombay. He called me to say, you know what, my son had gone to this conference that you were speaking at, and he told me about this shlok that you gave him. He was very impressed. Now, I'm admitting to you on public forum that I would not have done it myself if I had not have help from ChatGPT. So the idea was mine, the prompt was mine,
Conference.
but what would have taken me personally 2 3 days to prepare, or I would have asked my team, can you please make a speech? Look at this idea, look at that idea. They would have, it would not have been my speech, it would have been their speech. Here, I did not read from the script, but I got all the ideas that made it possible for me to give a very impressive speech. So, the
Ve-
two examples I'm giving you, which are real examples that I have used.
Very good example, sir. Very good. Very knowledgeable and interesting that was. So, coming up with my next question, what attitudinal change is required to professionals to thrive now, and how can they remain updated with the ever-changing technology?
See, the attitudinal change is that one has to understand that you have to learn all the time. Lifelong learning, as it is called, has to be a reality. You cannot want and aspire to success and achievement and growth in your career and think that whatever I know and my work experience is going to be enough. Earlier, the mindset was that I qualified myself from a good bachelor's, master's, MBA, sometimes PhD, and that is done. And now, because I'm working, I'm gathering lots of experience. And this experience itself is upgrading me and making me capable of dealing with the world and succeeding. And I don't need anything else. By doing and by working, I will learn. That's no longer true. You will have to learn new things as they come up. You will have to identify what is relevant to you, what might be applicable to what you do, and make a proactive effort to go out and acquire that knowledge or train yourself and learn. You have to have what is called a growth mindset, which is to say that I am not limited by my past. I have immense potential, and to reach that full potential, I need to constantly keep enhancing my skills, my knowledge, my experiences to continue to grow rather than be limited, to have a growth mindset rather than a limited mindset. So, lifelong learning and a growth mindset are, I think, very important.
So, do you see any organizations offering regular training programs to employees to stay updated with the changes, technological changes happening?
Oh, yes, enterprises are spending a lot of money and putting in a lot of effort into training their employees. There's absolutely no doubt. Uh, you know, we at Upgrad, and I founded Harappa, which is now part of Upgrad. So I've been very involved in enterprise level training of employees. I think at last count, we would have trained about 6 lakh professionals just during financial year 24. And about we're working across about 3,000 clients. And most of the upgrad work is around digital transformation, AI, data science, and so on. So to go back to the earlier discussion that we were having around AI and around lifelong learning, growth mindset, I think companies are putting in a lot of effort. See, earlier it used to be difficult because you had to do it in person.
Yes.
So you would have to send your employees somewhere, or you would have to have a facilitator come in and still get people together physically. You were limited by the capacity of the facilitator. But what we have been doing is combining online distribution of content, availability of content online digitally, which makes it possible for people to join from wherever they are and of course combining it with some physical wherever it is required. So this hybrid model of training has really opened the doors for companies to train many more employees and at consistent high quality. That's the key, that you're not dependent on the quality of the trainer, and the quality doesn't go down as you go into the interiors where it is difficult to find good trainers. You can actually have one central pool and you are broadcasting and training people around the world.
How do an individual employee disconcern suitable technological tools, or do they have any choice in that matter?
I think depends, if you're thinking about how they would exercise choice vis-a-vis company sponsored programs, then sometimes companies will pick you and tell you what to do, and you don't have too much choice. Uh, but I do think that they welcome employees who raise their hands and say, listen, I was not included. Can you please include me? Because they want employees to show enthusiasm and want to support that enthusiasm. In other cases, companies make the content available and then they tell employees that you decide what you want to choose and pick. Uh, they create a content library. So, for example, Harappa has this Thriversity library at Upgrad, where
Okay.
you can go through all the content on that we created at Harappa around Thrive skills, and you can pick and choose what you want. So there are all kinds of models that are available, and flexibility varies depending on what is the objective of the program that the company is.
How will an individual or the organization growth will be determined as technology is pervading the workplaces?
Yeah, so I think this is the whole point around digital leadership. Uh, but before that, I want to talk about, just cover off one point when you asked about how do employees get flexibility. Places like Upgrad offer a lot of free courses as well. So that's a good way to sample different areas of learning and then decide what you want to spend more time on. But coming back to the question that you asked, I think business leaders today very savvy about understanding how is technology, and particularly online and digital technologies, how are they affecting the running of my business and the offering of products and services to my customers and competition, right? Who in competition is doing what with technology? And so understanding that from a leader manager perspective has become very important. And when you try and understand that and figure out which of these things is applicable to my business, my sector, my function, then alongside that, you also have to think about how do my employees' capability and skills need to be improved to solve that problem, to improve on that problem.
Yes.
So tying in the talent and capacity and the skills and the competencies required to capture the digital opportunity is almost now an integral part of the thinking. You have to understand what the threat is, the disruption is, what challenge and opportunities it is creating, and to solve for that, what kind of talent and what kind of training do you need in your employees to be able to take advantage.
So, moving forward, in the future, shorter courses rather than a 2 year or 4 year courses will be the solution for the individuals to upskill themselves.
Yes, definitely. And we are again seeing this a lot at Upgrad, and it's very interesting to see that people are sort of quickly trying to uh, enroll in these courses and do what I call just-in-time learning. So yes, a lot of people are doing that, and that has been a big part of what people like Upgrad and some of the online learning platforms are offering. Most of the people who are on these platforms tend to be working professionals,
Yes.
and so they know now that as they work, They have to acquire these skills, and they use these skills to also make career transitions. So in financial year just completed, at Upgrad, I think we trained 55,000 students for transition. Students were largely working professionals. They had some job switches, they had some promotions, they had some acceleration in their careers. So yeah, and learners were placed across 3,000 companies. So this is in addition to what I was talking about, company sponsored training. So this is
Okay.
happening in a big way, where working professionals are taking short courses to upgrade themselves.
Okay, sir. So I think it's time to conclude.
Okay,
Thank you.
you you got what you wanted.
Oh, yes, sir.
All
And
right,
thank you so much for your time. It was pleasure working with you. We wish you and your team all the best for the future.
thank you
Okay.
so
Thank you,
much.
sir.
Thank you.